Thrilled to have Brooke Dunford, brand strategist for Boots and Hearts Music Festival and Big Sky Music Festival, and that beautiful site up there where we were able to film some footage from the Canadian Country Music Awards, including a performance by Brett Kissel. That's the last time we had a chance
hmm
to hang out, Brooke. How are things rolling together for you guys for 2021? Are you feeling pretty confident that you're going to be able to pull off a festival in the post-COVID era?
Well, I feel like it changes every month, but I think to the testament of what we saw this summer, you adapt and you learn and you change and you wait. And to see country music come to Burles Creek this summer when, you know, we knew it was shut down and you had to wait and you had to be patient to see the Canadian Country Music Association pull off what they did and just think outside the box and say, we're going to go in the middle of a field that has no infrastructure and we're going to bring what, as a fan, you love to see. You love to see them in the country and perform and sing the songs that you love and you listen to. I think it really brought a lot of optimism and a lot of encouragement to, okay, how are we going to change? How are we going to adapt? And what are the fans going to see? And it's up to us, right? So having
Mhm.
partners like that was incredible. And Brett's energy, walking, it gave us goosebumps as a producer world and as a fan of country music to watch him come up over the berm that you're used to seeing 40,000 people walk up and enjoy the night of their life. And there was no one there, but to see him walk over there and sing the songs that you're singing along to, it was as close to a dream as we could ever imagine, and certainly the scale that they brought us. And we never made it on television, so in a world that's shut down, there was new things for us. So it was special, and we see the artists want to come back, and we have our full lineup announcement, and I think that was probably the nerve wracking moment of at least 2020, where we say we don't know how yet because there's no rules or regulations, but we have a lineup. The artists are more excited than ever. And to put that out there in a climate that people are in their living rooms and can't gather with their friends, uh, it was amazing to see the response of the fans just saying, we don't know, we know as much as they know, and to see their encouragement and their excitement over the lineup that was transferred, but also new additions, and just to see the culture be alive in the announcement, I think was special. So that's as much as we have to hold on to right now
Right.
until we know more. But it was very encouraging just to see the fans there and hold on to their tickets and just wait and be hopeful. And that's all we can do.
Well, I think optimism is in short supply in the industry, but we are seeing that the fans are there. They're willing to
Mhm.
buy tickets. They want to support the format, and they want to come back and enjoy live music again. Because, frankly, if you're a fan of the format, which I know you are, and
Mhm.
I still am, I grew up loving country music. It's a mental health uh, bolster. Like it's so good for your mind to just show up at a show and escape your problems, one song at a time. And I think we've all been there. So I think the fans are going to be there for sure.
Yeah.
We're actually recording this podcast. It's going to air later, but we're recording it on October 22nd, and it's the afternoon. And right now, Ontario is locked down to phase two again, um, thanks to more COVID outbreaks. Is there a concern with you and the rest of the committee and the planners that and the producers that they may come back, the province may come back and reduce your capacity, or something to that degree? I mean, I know you guys have a massive property there at Burles Creek.
Yeah.
I know it's a big open air place, but is there that concern that they may come back and go, you know what, you guys are good to go, but at 50% of your regular capacity?
I think there always is. The one thing we've learned through all this is that you never know. So it's been encouraging for us to see that we can scale based off of this summer. It was really special. We moved a few performances to our forest area that was active with twinkle lights and backdrops. And we had Tebe and Tim Hicks and a lot of our emerging artists that we're so proud to support. And we brought them in, and Bell 5 TV featured their story with just audiences that were far apart, that it was intimate. So sometimes you think this is a 40,000 person venue, or, to think the Rolling Stones were there last year and then the next year is a uh, forest country fireside session with artists where you got to hear intimate stories of how they started and why they do what they do. It was really great to see that we can adapt and use the fresh air to our advantage. So I think um, scaling can happen. How that looks like, we'll see. I think,
Right.
it's good. I think sports and concerts will be the first to have to adapt. And luckily, we're later in, the summer season. But it was really encouraging to see the music industry and new forms of media where television and, new content series were up up to a new standard, and they really brought something that we've never seen happen at Burroughs Creek. So it made me encouraged to see who knows what next year will bring, just because I would
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
never expected something in this regard to work with television and to work with artists in such an intimate concert way.
Well, you guys have a fantastic commodity there. I want to talk about the lifestyle brand you guys have developed off the back end of Boots and Hearts, and the other festival properties on the site, and obviously the Stones concert. But as it pertains to next year, as you are buying talent, are you putting language in those offers and or the contracts that would pertain to protecting yourself in the event of reduced scaling and reduced capacity?
Yeah, I think if anything, it's been really great. I know in country music, the community supports one another more so than ever, and that's a strength in country music for sure. But to see someone like Eric Church, who we had on the 2020 lineup, you know, just within one day say, I'm going to be there next year. Tell the fans I'm coming back and tell them to hold on to their ticket. For us, that was a huge momentum where the artist was behind us and they said they want to come back and don't get rid of this date and keep it on the table.
And
So
will
I
work with
think,
you.
yeah, and will work with us. So I think,
Right.
and for us too, there's no word of a lie that we have no scale or no sisters or brother companies of any sorts. We're small business, so to see the support in that regard, where we'll work with you, we'll figure this out, and I think there's a reality that no one knows what will happen next summer, but the willingness, I think, is the biggest strength in it all. So for us, certainly as a small business and a small part of the food chain, that was really encouraging to see. And, as a venue, we'll continue to book and look for new events, whether it's every weekend or not at all. We're lucky in that sense that we won't do something unless it makes sense. So we're not sitting there worried that the doors can't be open or they have to be closed. It's more of if the decision makes sense, we're behind it the whole way.
Right.
But we're fortunate that way where it's an open field, so that's maybe the one strength in the outdoors is that you're not having to fill something all the time. It'll be a part of the country music community and music in general. If things come back and they want to play outdoors, we have the stage, we have the fan base, and hopefully, music is there for the fans. So we're hopeful.
Have you had to address implementing any safety measures as it pertains to the camping area or anything like that?
Well, we won't know until the rules are out there, but it is comforting to know that we have 600 acres, we have acreage to play with. So if you had to do every other campsite, or if you had um, to make adjustments, we know there'll be adjustments. We're excited to find out, and problem solving is part of music and it's part of festivals year after year. It's never the same. So it's just a part of the business and challenges that always arise. So we we'll see what happens, but there's room to play with. So, and
Right.
we'll do everything we can for the fans. I think that's what it comes down to. The refunds were there, the support in bringing them a lineup. we want to celebrate our 10 years together. No one wants to be apart. So certainly if there's a will, there will be a way, but anxious to see what that looks like.
And you guys are about to celebrate 10 years. Congratulations on that, because there's only a tiny percentage of festivals that make it to the 10-year mark. Uh,
Right.
Running consecutive years, of course, with COVID in there, but we're going to give everyone a mulligan for that because
Yeah,
it
people
shut
ask
down the
me like,
whole
"Brooke,
industry.
are you sure it's 10 years?" And I said, "Look, these fans have been with us for it's been 10 years of BootsLife. So whether or not we're in a field together or celebrating the artist, there's no doubt in my mind it's been 10 years of BootsLife because the fans have, responded to us, wrote us for a 10-year relationship, whether it's long distance or not, you're still in that relationship." So I think we really saw that this year when the videos and content that they would send us of their backyard parties, Boots' backyard, and their tents and their friends. And uh, it was another thing that just made you feel like we've got to figure it out for them. And we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the strength of country music or the fan base. So it was a special moment. The Boots lettering that they would put on their fences and their own merch that they made that year. It was fun. It was really really special. We certainly were humbled to see that. You don't always expect, they might just continue on in terms of celebrate that weekend and wait till next year. But they made fun things in their own backyard, so we're excited to have them back.
That's awesome. Yeah, you guys have you've created a very loyal following. I think a lot of that has to do with very wise curation of the artist lineup, but you've also been able to enhance the experience for consumers and for people who attend, and that's why they become so loyal, is because it's a great experience for them and a high value proposition for them as well. What are some of the things that Boots is doing that might set them apart or make them unique compared to some of the other festival competitors in that space? What are you guys doing that's a bit different?
It's interesting, we always look at what the fan wants. So once you start thinking or can do the same thing you've done every year, it means that you're not diving deep enough, I think. And when you live with them for 4 to 5 days, you look at it a little bit differently. You have to focus on how they get there, when they wake up, where they're sleeping, what their party is at night. So as much as it's about the curation of the artist and making sure you're delivering on the scale that you've set the precedence of since day one, right? So grab the attention of, Tim McGraw and Carrie Underwood and Kid Rock and some of the largest names in country. Certainly over 10 years, there's very few that haven't graced their presence in that regard, but you have to pay just as much attention to the experience. So we often joke we're less in music and we're more experiential, just because they truthfully spend more time in the campgrounds than they do in the bowl listening to music. So you have to make sure that you're valuing what the delivery is there just as
Yeah,
strong since the
it's a
minute they
whole
get there.
it's a
Yeah.
holistic experience for them. So then specific to that, what are some of the things you guys are doing to set that up and make it an easy experience, not just easy, but
Mhm.
easy, convenient, and valuable experience for the consumer? So talk a little bit to the specifics of that.
Yeah, we've over the years also it's fun, the customers changed, it's like trends, new things that they love or, um, uh, things have changed within country, so we've actually brought a lot to the campgrounds, where at first the debate was, bring them into the entertainment zone, um, which has been fantastic. And the sponsors year after year deliver experiences that you've never seen or that just enhance, the course saloon or being on top of the deck of the Monster Energy where you can see the whole venue. Things that really enhance just the deliverables that we could ever give. So we're very thankful that way. I think pushing our sponsors not to just bring um, the day to day cornhole activities, which can be just as fun, but and they're really putting their mind behind what can we do differently or what can we do. That's been really cool to see year after year, and that changes the carnival, the Ferris wheel. enhancing those items within the entertainment space, but then thinking outside the box to, all right, they're awake now. What are they doing? So are they having breakfast? Are we providing them with cereal? Are we, giving them all a bunch of late night food options just to make sure that, they go to bed full of music, but, not hungry. So we've brought a lot more into the campgrounds because we've realized that's where they spend 5 days, which is just insane. And for me too, I've spent that time out there, so I certainly have a respect in that regard of, you're with your tent, you're with your friends, and to enhance that experience is beneficial. You have general stores and you have a city out there. So I think the camping experience is who we are. It's Boots Life. It's in our DNA, and then making sure that we have a lineup that is exciting, that have the names that they want to see, but also there's a big element in a festival community that's about discovery. So making sure that we're bringing you, someone, if you've never heard of them and they're playing at 2 or 3 o'clock, it means you should come and see them, because the track record of Chris Stapleton being at the side stage that no one knew, and he
That's
played
so
every
funny.
day.
That was the example I was just going to mention. I'm like, you guys had Chris Stapleton on the side stage at 2 in the afternoon before anybody knew who he was, and so there are lots of opportunity to catch the next wave of major headliners at your festival if you're there good and early.
Yeah, so I think when you're living with them with 5 days, every day is different, and you have to make sure that country in itself, I think that's been the exciting part over the years, is it's changed and it's grown, and whether it's Americana, whether you've learned about a songwriter who has come out of what you feel is nowhere, but because he's so strong, whether it's a Morgan Wallen or a Hardy played the first slot on Sunday, which you've got to debate has to be one of the toughest after living out in the campgrounds for 4 days. And just his popularity in Rednecker and his new songs Inside Sober You. And then to bring him back a year later in a slot that's third to close, because that festival, fan base has really seen him grow. I think that's the fun part about festivals. So it's fun that way too, because for us celebrating our 10 year and having the headliners we do, Dan and Shay they experienced their first Canadian performance with us, and that was back in 2014. And funny enough, that when I look back, and sometimes they all jumble together, but that year was Brett coming, and he was on the side of the truck. That was when Sam Hunt was still, I remember it was raining and people just, I think, took shelter, but not necessarily understanding who this guy was. But once they saw him, they were like, okay, like, this is incredible. But over the past 10 years, I think to see our headliners now be a part of our experience in the side stage and grow with the fans, that's been really cool. So I'm excited who's on the side stage now that in 7 years is a headliner that, country and the fan base has just really dug their teeth into. And we've created headliners and fan bases just with streaming and radio and the popularity of the genre that's really grown overnight. I think it's really exciting.
Well, and I think that dials back to the most paramount fixture to the success of your event, which is the passion you all have as organizers for the format. You actually live and breathe country music. You love country music. And
I
that is
personally
the
do, yeah.
secret to programming, right? Because then you're actually on the cutting edge of what's interesting, unique, and potentially going to be a headliner within 5 to 10 years. You're actually paying attention to all of that. And I think it's brilliant how you guys have built artists up and taken ownership of that by developing them through sort of like your own farm team system all the way
Yeah.
to the slot of the headliner, right? But you've also got the emerging artist showcase, which has been really critical to getting exposure and developing Canadian talent. Tell us a little bit about how that program came to be and then the success you've had with that program thus far.
Well, it's funny you said that, because I was going to mention the first person I think of when you talk about like seeing them in the side stage and saying like, "Oh wow, the world will get to see them," would be Jade.
Jade
So
Eagleson.
yeah, so your very own Jade Eagleson, I think, is just a testament to as because we are country fans. So certainly Boots is based off of that. I couldn't talk on any other genre just based off of um, where Boots and Hearts came from and just the fact that you're out there living and breathing 4 to 5 days. You kind of live what I say, you live the country song. So even if you don't necessarily know country music, just by being with your friends in a tent and outdoors, that country song becomes relevant real quick. You can be a city gal, a city boy, and being at Boots and experiencing Boots life, you're living the songs real time. So that's the fun part. But I think what the emerging artist showcase has brought is we've really got excited about artists. So it's kind of like we know we have the fans living with us and loving the music. How can we find and support Canadian artists and say, here's a platform, here's people that are ready to listen, that are just across this field, and how can we build enough momentum to support new artists, give them a voice? They don't, and this is something that Stan's always said is, let's make sure that they don't have to go to Nashville. Like, do they really have to pick up and go and live in another state to make a living? Right? It's a scary thing. So, what can we do as a Canadian music festival with the fortunate audience we do? Um, and he's just super passionate about singing because of his own love of country music and growing up singing and his love of music, that he will listen to YouTube channels. Like we'll get 400, 500 applicants and he'll just listen to all of them. And when you get that excited about, okay, we've whittled it down to 7 or 8, you've seen it in the past where, you know, Tim Hicks wasn't the winner, but he was the runner up. And just as rightfully so, all 7 and all finalists or participants have a huge trajectory in the fact that they are the top of what Canada we feel has to offer. And that's been Tennille Arts, like seeing her, she was a part of um
The
our emerging arts
Backlog,
showcase. Yeah.
James Barker Band, obviously Jade Eagleson, who you mentioned, David
Yeah.
Boyd James. Like, you guys have an amazing track record with getting artists, the ability. Jordan McIntosh, who I work with, was in
Hmm.
it one year. But giving artists the ability to sort of showcase in front of a captive audience and giving them some love on your platforms, which are significant as well, to give them a nice little lift to get the attention they might need to actually get signed.
Yeah, and for us, it's, we're not a management company. We're not in the agent world. We're not in the ownership world. But for us to just kind of like on a platform say, hey guys, like these are great people and they sound great and they, are in front of the Canadian country music world is a humbling experience. It's really great to at least say like, hey, everyone, look over here, these people. And that's why I mentioned Jade. Like when we heard his voice, whether it was the first YouTube clip that he sent in, it was like, whoa, this is not
Hmm.
normal, like that deep and that real. And I think Boots and Hearts is, really loves that kind of authenticity in an artist and in the people. And he embraced that. And when he went up there, it was kind of like, this is something special. So you actually in that moment, you sit there and you're waiting for people to notice and you're like, you you really want to see it grow and you really want to see the rest of the story play out because you don't forget that moment, right? When
Right.
their life does get introduced to country music, it does start to change, but being a part of the story, I think is really special for us. So year after year, it's something we love and we will always focus on and we're really proud of. But it is special and it's been great seeing it develop just based off of like you remember those moments of it's a YouTube clip and then it's a side stage and then they
Right.
get the main stage. So their
It's
story
also a
goes
really
on.
great it's also a really great way for you guys to pay homage to the fact that you're a Canadian festival based in Canada. A lot of your headliners, and I want to talk a little bit about the process of selection and curation, have to be American because you have to sell the amount of tickets to
Yeah,
justify.
that's
So this is a good way to
yeah.
give back to the Canadian industry, right?
Yeah, and
That
it's so funny now, like, we're a Canadian-run small business that lives in the Canadian market. It's not part of a conglomerate that's outside of Canada or that, has other entities that really help in country, I will say, in terms of just global scale and knowing that country is much larger than Canada and its strength is in the US. So for us, it took a while, and we're very thankful that over 10 years, it's kind of an homage to what I'd say the future of Canadian country has, because there's eyeballs, there's people traveling, and when they do talk about it on the highway, and Buzz is saying like, "I'm coming up there," or we are nominated for ACM in the US alongside like the best festivals in the world, I think
yes,
is very humbling, more so just for Canadian country music. It's like, okay, let's all work together and make something special and be proud of it for Canada, because that's who we are. So and the fans should be proud of that because they're a part of that story. So just as much as we're there, but it's them.
and how cool is it going to be for the fans, for you, and for the story to see someone go full circle from that
I know.
emerging artist showcase or one of your side stages to being a headliner? That's going to happen at some point. At one point, you guys will
We
have
won't be able
a
to
Canadian
afford them.
artist on that. No, no, no. If you can afford our church, you can afford a Canadian.
Yeah,
You're gonna have a Canadian artist who can justify that slot, who very well may have come through your ranks, and that does take sometimes decades or more, right? Like this is a
there's
real
nothing we'd
long-term
wanna see
game.
more.
How cool would
Yeah,
that be?
for country music
Yeah.
for sure in Canada. Um, that that would be the dream. No one wants to pay an American act, right? If you're a Canadian
American
festival and you're
dollars.
yeah, it's a scary
Yeah.
thing. So I think, and the homage, and we've talked about this with Brett. He's a perfect example. Like when someone is that active on social and supports the values that we do in valuing their fans and community and being thankful about their community and where they started and telling the story. Um, you want to see that because you know that it means that much more when they're on
Right.
Canadian soil and they're talking to the fans. It's a very special thing, and I think that's what I miss about live music is seeing them in the festival setting when they're raising a beer or their fans are running over the edge to come see them. It's that special moment and that experience. um it
There's
changes
nothing
every
like
year. No, there's
it.
nothing like it, and it's unique every year, and it's really authentic. So that's, I guess, the country music love there, that
Yeah.
I think there's no other genre is that gritty and authentic and real, and that audience is really just there in the rain. I think that was the
Well,
biggest thing. We had rain every year, and you're like, "Are these people gonna camp? Are they gonna leave their tents?" And they're the best fans in the world.
yeah,
So
they come
when
out, they're good sports. They'll hang
yeah,
in there. And you and I are very aligned on that. As a guy who's produced some events, there's just no feeling that replaces that
yeah,
beautiful exchange that you watch between an artist and their audience, and when you get to stand side stage and you understand that you're a part of that process, it fills your heart. And the funny thing about this business is that we all follow our heart into the music industry. Nobody follows their head into the music industry,
you're
right?
right.
We follow our heart.
Nothing has been
We
more true.
no, we start to use our head in order to maintain a living and a standard
Yeah.
and stay in the industry, but we require those moments of fulfillment again to remind us why we got into it in the first place, because it's not always easy,
It's a
right?
good
And
point. I remember the moment where, as a fan, I was there for 5 days every day and with my group of friends, and it was what we called our, vacation every year. So I would take all of the time off I had from work and just go out there with my friend group year after year and camp. And then once I got into it and I saw the amount of people that physically work on a festival to make it happen, and you're talking about a 4-day event and you're working 365 days, or seeing just in that maybe last month, the amount of production in that world that has to happen and build, I almost had this like profound guilt where I was like, as a fan, I had no idea the capacity and the amount of people and the world that it took to make something like this happen on the back end. So that's been really cool. I think, like you said, you don't go into it with your head. You know, you're a fan of it, and then it opens your eyes more so than I've never really had that experience like I did in that maybe first year where you're just dumbfounded. I think it's been very cool to see it from fan to maybe profession in that
Right.
regard.
In
Yeah,
other
it was.
businesses, they would call it you're getting to see how the sausage is being made,
There you go.
but in our business, it's actually a beautiful thing to be backstage and see all those moving parts and see the crews and all of the labor and the hard work and the
Hmm.
long hours it takes to pull something like this off
And it
and how
takes a whole
rewarding it
year.
is.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
wait a whole year to see something. You better not sleep or blink those 4 days.
yeah.
So that was very cool. I think that adds to a new perspective that I've gained.
But you must have some people every once in a while, because I know I get this in our business too, who just totally miss the mark on how much work and effort is deployed, and they're like, well, you got boots and so what are you doing the rest of the year, like now you're done for the year. I'm sure you get all those, and they don't understand that really you take this small little decompression, maybe a couple of days, and then you're just back at it again.
Yeah, that is very, very true. And I think it's never been more apparent than COVID, because you're like, oh, you didn't have a festival this year. So what are you doing? Let alone the 365 days outside of the 4 days. And it just goes back to the fans. We're very grateful that we have such an engaged following. So you almost like you can't rest because they are there for you to give them content or participate in the conversation or make them feel that you're there for them and keep that community going so that it is growing year to year. So I think that's been a big part of Boots and Heart's strength is it's not a festival in a way. We don't look at it as, okay, your 4 days are done and go to the beach and see you all next year. It's a
Mhm.
very small group of dedicated people that focus on what are we saying 365 days, what are we doing, what does the fan want, what do they love, and talking, and just it's just I that's the whole lifestyle brand behind it, right?
Right. You've been
It's
able to establish that because you've created a great product that stands on its own in terms of reputation. And how are you guys planning to continue to build that out? What other non-traditional partnerships have you sought in terms of maybe partnerships with, Amazon Music or Spotify,
mhm.
or how are you looking to stay front and center in the mind of the consumer 365 days a year, other than what you're doing on socials, which, by the way, is pretty impressive. You've got great social media numbers, but how are you guys staying front and center year round?
I think that's a new exciting part of our business is we might have focused so much on, what's the lineup, when are tickets going on sale, and you work so quickly within a year just to hit those marks. So I think there's been a blessing in a way with this slowdown to say, all right, what have we always wanted to work on? Like, what
Right.
can we do new?
What are the
And
content pieces and the
yeah,
alignments and the partnerships that we could now
yeah,
chase because we have the time to deploy
yeah.
against it? Yeah.
The lineups put together, we're on sale. So that's exciting for us as we grow and we really focus on doing everything we can for the fans. So I think the fact that even with this lineup here, we've grown larger than we've hit the largest response in a lineup and engagement rates that we've ever seen. So we just got to keep that going and making sure that, the fans are there and they're responding bigger and better than they ever have. So let's keep pushing that. Let's, sit as a team and talk about. And that's been really fun is you can think of an idea today and next week you see it happen. So that's been the fun and exciting part. And a lot of times we ask the fans, which is really cool. It's what they want and what they want to see, and they're a part of it and they're picking. And I think that's a great part of growing a digital community is they're in the driver's seat just as much as, we want that and will allow. So that's been cool. So I wish I could lay it all out for you, but I think the good part is we are always evolving and listening,
Hmm.
and it'll it'll be something that we're excited to really push our boundaries on this coming year for sure, and especially as our 10-year, really honoring the fact that we've had 10 years of really special moments and highlighting that and asking our fans, let's have that nostalgic moment together and talk about it. And you learn a lot when you ask that question. So that will dictate where we go and what we do. And growing, we've done Boots and Hearts present shows. So we've done different things. We've
Royal Winter
went
Fair in Toronto.
exactly. So I
Yep.
think knowing that now, I think statistically we were really blown away when we saw that we were the most engaged festival in North America in terms of the audience response and their engagement, and now to be the largest festival in Canada with a digital following. I think that just makes us really go to the table and say, what are we going to do with the fans? Because they're there, they're listening. So you can't wait on that, or else you owe it to them
Right.
so that they're there year after year. So I think
If you're taking care of the fans, everything else is going to fall into place one way or the other. That's
mhm,
really what's paramount in this business, right? Like if the fans are taken care of, the ticket price is right, they're packed in there. Obviously, things might be different in the COVID era, but the artist is going to have a good time. The event's going to be successful. Everything's going to work. So you got to take care of the fans. You got to take care of the artists, and that's always a balancing act. But when it comes to curation and building out your lineup, uh,
and I will just say it doesn't always work. So even, you know what I mean? You said it doesn't. And I think that's been just as strong as anything else. So it's fun when you put out a project out there and you say like, okay, is this something the fans want to see? And they're excited, but then you have to say, okay, what do we learn from this? So
mhm.
I think that's the exciting part of every year. If we knew how to do it, then every year we would kind of sit back and enjoy, but it is a grind. So it is making sure that you're assessing all of the outcomes and putting your time in things. You can't do it all. So I've had to make sure that as a country fan, I want to see so much, but I have to think, what
Right,
what
right.
there's only so
Well,
much time in a day, so it
and
doesn't always work. I'll definitely say that.
that's where there's a real conflict at times between personal preference and passions for
Mhm.
artists within the format versus data and analytics. So, how do you guys weigh that out? I mean, how do you make those determinations when you're considering the lineup? Obviously, you want to make sure that you don't have a bunch of repeats from the year before or two
Mhm.
years before. I don't know what your standard is on that, but you're probably trying to space artists out a certain amount of time, and then you're relying on data and analytics, but there's also a gut feel aspect to this business too, and that factors in as well. So tell us how you balance all three of those and anything else you might be bringing to the table.
Yeah. I wish there was a secret sauce, um, to say what our norm is, but we definitely hold a strong weight in newness because at the end of the day, whether that's personal or professional, whether it's because I've seen it over 10 years as a fan, I definitely want to see newness, but
fresh
you also
fresh
have
lineup.
yeah, you also have to remember if our target demo is 18 to 24, not everyone is staying 18 to 24. I'm not anymore. So uh it's a rude awakening when you're not the young demo anymore and you have to ask. I now have to say like, what are the kids listening to? And that was something new for me, right? I have to
Yeah.
admit like I'm not that target demo anymore, so I have to make sure that I'm humbled in saying that I don't know what's cool. But I think so. You ask and you watch what your demo's asking for. That's
So who are
always
you
big.
asking? Do you have like a circle of trusted people that you go to, or are you
The
literally doing
fans, we
outreach to
ask.
fans through your social media? Like, tell me about that process.
Yeah, so I would say, um, number 1 would be newness. You need that to be a fresh new lineup year after year,
Yep.
and it's very difficult in the Canadian and the American market to deliver that. I will say with country music growing as much as it has, that's been incredible. Just to see new faces and to see the streams and the numbers be behind new faces has been great and exciting. So it's actually new. Even over 50% of our lineup going into next year is new. They've never even touched foot on our venue, which after 10 years and you have 40 acts a year is pretty crazy. So that's a testament to country music, I would say, that we're able to do that. And then, yeah, you're saying who do you ask and what do you lean on? We're probably on the spectrum too far of gut and intuition, and we're not scientific. We don't have the data like big companies do, and big people that do this, 20, 30, 40, 50 times a year.
Right. The
So
hard ticket data is not as accessible for you guys, but you do have streams, social media
yeah,
followers. You can do
yeah.
some geographic analysis on that too, obviously.
Yeah, and that's big for us. So it's a good thing that you mentioned. For us, the biggest thing that always comes up, whether it's between you and I or anyone, is that because we offer such a large audience, we're just as much a hometown festival for Sudbury as we are Barrie. In a
Right.
weird way, we're a hometown festival for so many geographical areas, whether it's Ottawa, whether it's a city in Quebec, or it's London, or it's again Northern Ontario. So you have to really look at like who are they seeing every year, who do they really who do they never get a chance to see, and that really helps with bringing people a far distance, because when you have them, I will say, for 5 days, they're traveling, they're setting up camp, a new home. Um, Certainly not in the world of touring or concerts or that data. So I think it is a lot about who hasn't been in a while, and they're going to be like, wow, I really am excited that I get to see them. And that was, I think, the most prevalent with Alan Jackson bringing him on, that audience doesn't get to see. And then,
Well, he
you know,
hadn't
you
toured in Ontario since like 2010, so it was brilliant to bring him up.
So I would say, yeah, the mix, right? It is you try every year to go for whether it's a mix of geographical attendance or who's hot and new. Certainly, you try every year to get the hottest act. But as you and I both know, if they're on a tour cycle, or if they are not going to choose to do festivals, or that plays a big role. So it's not for lack of trying. We always try to get the artist number one that our fans ask for. I think we start there. I think that's our deliverable that we owe them, right?
And how do
Year
the
after
fans
year.
outreach to you? Are they just doing that generally through social media comments
They
and
do, they
DMs?
do. They'll,
Yeah.
whether it's an email or it's a tweet, they make
Yeah.
it known, and we'll ask. And I think that's important, that we always ask and we find out. And then you're looking at this year's XMs, like who are they featuring? That that behind so much weight, who's the industry talking about? That in a year's time, that if other avenues are passionate about it, that it's fun to bring people up to Canada who've never been,
Mhm.
because in their world they don't know of who's going to be there. And Dan and Shay did that. Like, I remember having that conversation with them when they popped up on a Fanfare Village stage, and they're like, do you think someone will stop when we're playing to and not just walk by? And we're like, yeah, it's going to be great. And we saw that moment with them, and then they came back on the side stage, got rained out, and they were like, well, let's just pop up for them. So we put them late night, and just to see the fans still come out later than they ever have, because we don't normally have a set that late. So it's a fun mix to bring people that people have never seen, to try and talk to the managers and the artists to say, is it your year? Like, that's the other thing. You plan for multiple years. You can't make everyone fit in one year. But if you're like, all right, you have a lot coming out next year, we're still around next year. We're all part of the
Right.
community. So we'd love to see them succeed in a year that they feel like they're putting all their eggs in their basket. Why push them to come one year just because you love that one song on the radio and you need to hear it. So
Well,
um,
and you've also got to plan around hard ticket tours, and you've got artists who are coming up on tour and they might be rolling through the market in February or March. Well, it's very hard to bring them back in August as a headliner, and you
yeah,
have radius exclusions to deal with all that. But I would imagine that's also the challenge to elevating some of the Canadian talent on your lineup, because Canadians, in order to make a living, have to
yeah,
tour in Canada. Ontario is a massive market. You guys are in Ontario. So Canadians have to roll through generally, whether it's fourth quarter of the year prior to your festival or first quarter on a tour. And that, by virtue of that touring cycle, takes them out of mix for consideration for you a lot of years, I would imagine.
yeah, and at the times you're right. It's a lot of everyone builds their ideal festival lineup. And as country fans, that's a lot of fun. But then a lot of the reality is what are you spending and what logistically can happen. So that's the real world life of it all, right? So I think at the end of the day, this team we focus on running a business. So that's the reality that I'm very thankful that they've instilled that in us, saying, you're not going to have a job next year. If you go over budget, if you get excited about what could be rather than what should be, then you can't book next year, or you can't work on that awesome marketing plan, or you can't look that artist in the eyes and say, yeah, we're going to do what we talked about a couple years ago. So there's a lot of strength in knowing what we can and cannot spend. And you're right. When are you going to pay for that artist to come? Are you going to allow them to tour in Ontario? And because the more they do and the more fan base they get, the better for all of us. So I think you want to encourage that in a degree, because when they're going to all those small towns that we necessarily want country music to grow into, that's a benefit to everyone. So it's you work with everyone, but you do at the end of the you lose people in some regard saying it would have been great to have them because their song is number one on the radio.
Right.
But plans are plans for a reason, and
Hmm.
budget is a budget for a reason. So you always, I think, try to make it work and try to make sure everyone's benefiting. The artist is feeling good. I chose Boots and Hearts this year, which means I'm not going around town everywhere. And that's an homage we have to the fans, right? Because if they are going to spend the money, they are going to dedicate 4 days and they're going to travel from Montreal to Burles, you better deliver them something that they
Right.
don't always get. So I think,
And planning is imperative for outlining your budgets. There's a
mhm,
practicality angle to this. Fail to plan to fail. So you have to be very judicious as you're making these decisions years in advance, and working with these agents years out. Um, but then that brings me to my next question: why the hell would you guys do the Rolling Stones there? What was that all about? What was the impetus behind that? Because as cool as that was to see, that must have been some incredible undertaking.
so it's funny, like, obviously that was a company initiative and a decision. I think from what I can gather, it's the same thing as we talked about, whether it's an Ontario act or the Rolling Stones. If geographically it works and you're able to say they're not going to come to Canada, but if we tell them we have a venue that allows them to, make that one stop shop in Canada, then is it worth the value of spend? So uh, it was a certainly an incredible moment for us as a small business and as a venue who hasn't seen a large touring act come in, but has been patient enough to know we're here.
Mhm.
Uh, th- we have the capacities, whether it's our small stage of 5 to 10,000 or it's 70,000, that capacity is there, that willingness is there, that paycheck can be there if, again, you promise me you're not going to go anywhere else in Canada and we can make something really, really special. So
Well, and it's
I
a
think,
feather in the cap for the site as well. Like I mean, I get it because you guys are building out your own festival properties, but you're also trying to solicit business from massive tours, from potentially other promoters who might want to come in there and put on events. And if
mhm.
you've hosted the Rolling Stones and you've done that successfully, it doesn't get any bigger than that. So
Yeah, a
all
lot of
of a
it's
sudden,
funny to say, like, a lot of people said, like, "You can't do that. That's crazy." And I'm not saying that they were wrong, but to work together as a team and come out and say, "Oh, but we can do the Rolling Stones," that is, something no, wishing on a star would ever have predicted that, but it allows you to really step back and you're like, okay, what we can do it if it makes sense,
right.
if it means that we can offer again to the fans, if we can offer something with a camping experience and that is based off of that relationship and that dedication that a fan has with an artist, we want to see that happen. Whether that's in a small degree in a discovery artist or a large scale audience, we feel we're in a place that, if the stars align, and if I think it comes down to the artist and the artist team, if they want to do something unique and different and based in experience,
And it
then
puts you into that realm
we're
of
there.
now it's not beyond your ability to host a Paul McCartney, Guns N' Roses, U2. I mean, all these massive stadium level tours now can take a look at Canada and decide what they want to do in the GTA area, but also consider your site along with those plans, depending on what kind of an experience they're looking for. So I see it as a brilliant marketing move to put you guys in a new echelon for sure. And then you've talked a lot about the growth of the format of country music, which is really what the bread and
Mm,
butter is. As the format has grown, there's been some fragmentation because as anything gets bigger, there's subsets within that particular group, right? This has been the impetus for you guys to create the Big Sky Festival because this is
right.
a festival that is geared more towards people probably 40 plus years of age, grew up listening to some of these artists who perform in the lineup in the 90s, or even the 80s for that matter. So you guys have built that out in addition to what you're doing with Boots. And at first glance, a lot of people might go, well, why would you have two different country music
Yeah.
festivals? And aren't you going to cannibalize yourself? But there's some method to your madness between dividing that up. So just go into that process a little bit for people if you don't mind.
Yeah, I would say over if you looked at that experience and that understanding of the way we've approached country music, I think maybe you don't see the potential in country music. And that's what I get excited about because if you look 10 years ago when we started and you have Alabama and you have Tim McGraw and you have Big and Rich and you even have Lionel Richie on the lineup, you're talking about a niche genre. And that was and it wasn't even an age specific demo, I would say. I feel like country in one way is a state of mind. And I learned that the hard way just by working on the street team and driving around and talking to customers. You can't judge someone by saying, oh no, they're not going to like country music. Because we've had people come up of all ages saying, this is the best weekend of my life. I go with my girlfriends, I leave my husband's at home. And it's a state of mind. So for us, I think the biggest reason we saw potential in diversifying within country would be that the genre was changing. We follow again the fans. We follow the genre and the state that it is in which you're looking at a roster of musicians and you're thinking, man, there's so much growth and potential and attention in this new type of country. And when you see our demo, it got 18 to 24 real quick and strong. So when you're looking at your majority demo, I would say you can't make everyone happy, and I think that's the biggest thing you kind of have to sink your teeth into with social media these days, and certainly in festival culture. Everyone wants their unique lineup and their personal lineup. And um, what we did was we looked at the majority of our lineup, and the genre that was becoming really popular was a bit more um, pop country, and it was also nostalgic. You know, you see Alan Jackson in there and you see other people, but it was based off of a state of mind of that party music. And we felt like we had this database over the past 10 years that needed somewhere to go. If we felt we weren't doing enough to them, if we couldn't get those acts or that state of mind that they originally came to us for, all
Mhm.
right, let's look at the growth of Boots and the growth of something new where they could keep that kind of RV culture and hang out with their friends and listen to really, really good classic country. And funny enough, that's a new genre in itself because it's not just the old country. You see people like Jade who are like, I will not sing anything but that Randy Travis world. And that's me. So we actually would like to foster that genre and
The
keep our teeth,
neo-traditional genre.
yeah, keep our
Yes.
teeth in that as we see maybe Boots or hot country, whether that be the old stuff, the new stuff, or new stuff. We want to be able to make sure we're offering our fans different entities. And you still saw young people at Big Sky that had dirt on their boots and their belt buckles were on, and they loved it because that's what they've known and they love. And they were able to kind of have that RV world because we had just as many RVs at Big Sky being a small boutique festival as we did at Boots, which really opened our eyes. We're saying like these people want to come to something that is more traditional. So we're excited to continue that and just give our fans and our audience something that we feel is there.
Mhm. Well, it's certainly working for you guys, and congratulations again on all the success. 10 years in this business is like 100 years in any other one. So, so good on you for pulling that off, and
Well,
thank you for
here's to
taking all
10
the
more that we don't
10
know
more
what
multiple
it'll look
times.
like, but to
Yeah.
make it new and fresh every year. So,
Well, here's to a great year ahead. Thanks for taking the time today, Brooke. I
no,
appreciate
thank
it.
you. Thanks so much, Jim.